I only dated tall men and mocked those who were short. But when I finally met my dream man, he rejected me for being overweight. I decided to expose him publicly for discriminating against me. I have always known what I want in a man, and I don't apologize for having standards. In a world where women are constantly told that we must settle, I have firmly maintained my principles regarding what I consider attractive. And my number one principle, my non-negotiable filter, has always been height. I don't go out with short men. No, it is not a matter of malice. It is a simple aesthetic and biological preference. I like tall men, who make me feel protected, who can reach the top shelf without a ladder. It is a preference as valid as someone liking blonde hair or blue eyes. Throughout my 20s and early 30s, I have applied this filter with a consistency of which I'm proud. I remember Daniel, a brilliant and funny coworker who asked me out. He was perfect on paper, but he measured barely 1.70 m. I had to tell him kindly that I only saw him as a friend. Or Carlos, a sweet guy I met at a wedding and who was incredibly attentive, but who was my same height. Simply no. The physical attraction was not there. My friends sometimes told me I was superficial, but I saw it as being efficient. Why waste my time and theirs if I knew that a fundamental requirement was not met? I have never been cruel about it. I have always tried to be polite using excuses like, I don't feel the spark, or I'm not looking for anything serious right now. But the underlying reason was always the same. For me, a man's height is a reflection of his presence, of his masculinity. It is a personal preference, and I have all the right in the world to have it. It is not discrimination, it is selection. It is what everyone does in the dating market, only I'm more honest with myself about it. A couple of months ago, after a long period of disappointing dates with tall but boring men, I felt that the universe was finally rewarding me for my patience and my inflexible standards. Through a dating app, one matched with Marcos. His profile was, in a word, perfect. He measured 1.90 m, former university basketball player. He had a successful job in marketing, a dazzling smile, and photos of his travels around the world. He was the embodiment of everything I had been looking for and, to my delight, he seemed just as interested in me. Our first date was magical. We met at an elegant wine bar. Marcos was even more impressive in person. He was charismatic, intelligent, and listened to me with an attention that made me feel like the only woman in the room. The conversation flowed effortlessly for hours. We talked about everything, about our jobs, about our families, about our dreams. There was instant chemistry, a connection that went beyond the physical. At the end of the night, he walked me to my car and gave me a kiss. Perfect. I went home convinced that I had finally found the man of my life. The second date was even better. He took me to dinner at a restaurant with a months-long waiting list. Clearly, he had pulled strings to get the reservation. I felt incredibly special. During dinner, he asked me deep questions about my passions, about my vision of life. I, for my part, was completely captivated. His height, his success, his charm, it was a complete package. I already imagined introducing him to my family, the vacations we would take, the power couple life we would build together. I know I'm not a runway model. I have been overweight and have had it most of my adult life, but I'm a self-confident woman. I'm funny, intelligent, I have a great personality, and I take care of myself. I dress well, I wear makeup, I have confidence in who I'm, and I have always believed that confidence is the most attractive thing a woman can have. On our 2 dates, Marcos did not seem to have any problem with my physique. On the contrary, he paid me compliments. He told me I had a beautiful smile and that he loved my energy. He didn't give me a single sign that my weight was a problem. At the end of the second date, while we were waiting for the valet, he put his arm around me and said, "I'm having an incredibly good time with you, Laura." I felt the same. I was about to suggest a third date when he continued, but I have to be honest with you. My heart skipped a beat. I expected a confession of eternal love. Instead, what came next was a slap of a cruelty that I still cannot comprehend. With a calm that made everything even more hurtful, Marcos looked me in the eyes and said, "You are an amazing woman. You are intelligent, funny, and I have enjoyed every minute of our conversations, but I don't feel the physical attraction I need to start a relationship." I froze. I tried to say something, but he continued with brutal honesty. "It is a matter of personal preference. I'm simply attracted to women who have a more active lifestyle and a more athletic physique. It is not a judgment on you at all, but it wouldn't be fair to either of us to start something if that fundamental physical spark isn't there for me." I was left speechless. I felt the blood draining from my face. A more active lifestyle, a more athletic physique were euphemisms. He was calling me fat. He was rejecting me after 2 perfect dates, based solely on my weight. I couldn't believe the superficiality, the crudeness of his comment. It was as if all the connection we had built in those hours of conversation had evaporated, reduced to a simple calculation of kilos. I tried to defend myself. I told him with a trembling voice, "But what about everything else? The chemistry, the laughs? Does none of that matter?" And he, with unbearable condescension, told me, "It matters, of course, and that is why I hope we can be friends." Friends. The classic consolation prize. The pat on the head for the funny but fat girl. I felt a wave of rage so intense it almost choked me. I told him I was not interested in his friendship. I told him that it seemed incredibly superficial and cruel to judge someone by their physical appearance in such a flagrant way. He simply shrugged and said, "I'm just being honest. It's my preference. Just like you can prefer tall men or men with dark hair. We cannot control what attracts us." And that comparison, that absurd equation of his fat phobia with a simple preference, was the final insult. I took my car and left there, leaving behind the perfect man who had revealed himself as a superficial monster. I have been turning that conversation over for a week, and every time I repeat it in my head, my indignation grows. This is not a simple matter of preferences. Rejecting someone for their weight is discrimination. It is fat phobia. It is reducing a person's value to a number on the scale. We live in a society that constantly bombards us with images of unreal bodies, and men like Marcos are the enforcers of that aesthetic tyranny. He doesn't have a preference, he has a prejudice. His attempt to compare his prejudice with my standards regarding height is ridiculous and offensive. My preference for tall men is completely different. Height is a traditional masculine trait associated with strength and protection. It is an evolutionary preference, almost biological. It is not the same as discriminating against someone for their weight, which is something that can fluctuate and is subject to a million factors, many of them out of a person's control. Besides, I have never been so cruelly direct when rejecting someone. I have always protected their feelings. He, instead, used his honesty as a weapon to humiliate me. I feel incredibly deceived. During our dates, he made me feel seen, heard, desired. He made me believe that the connection we had was what mattered, and then he discarded me as if I were a defective product that did not meet the specifications. It was all an act. He was simply enjoying the conversation while in his head, he had already discarded me for my physique. The idea turns my stomach. I have spoken with my friends, and they are all indignant on my behalf. They tell me I have gotten rid of a superficial man, that I deserve someone who values me for who I'm. And they are right, but that doesn't diminish the sting of the injustice. I have spent years filtering men who did not meet my standards, waiting patiently for the ideal man to arrive. And when he finally arrives, he turns out to be just as superficial as those I myself would have discarded, but using a different criterion. It is a cosmic and cruel irony. I cannot let it go. This is not about him. No, I really no longer want to be with such a superficial man, but this is a matter of principles. I cannot allow him to go through life thinking that his behavior is acceptable, that he can judge and discard women based on their dress size and call it preference. Someone has to make him understand that what he did was discriminatory and hurtful. I have decided to write him an email. Not a pleading one, nor a furious one, an educational one. I'm going to explain to him calmly and with solid arguments the difference between a preference and a prejudice. I will talk to him about the damage caused by unreal beauty standards, about how his comment, even if he considered it honest, perpetuates a toxic culture. I will give him links to articles about fat phobia and the body acceptance movement. My goal is not for him to come back to me. My goal is for him to learn, to grow as a person. I want the next time he meets an amazing woman who doesn't fit his Instagram mold, he thinks twice before discarding her. I want him to understand that a person's value cannot be measured in kilos. It is my duty, as a woman who has been a victim of his prejudice, to educate him. Perhaps it will be of no use. Perhaps he will delete it without reading it, but I have to try. If I manage to plant a small seed of doubt in his superficial mind, if I manage to get him to reflect, even a little, on his behavior, then my painful experience will have served for something. I'm not being spiteful. I'm trying to make the world a slightly better and less superficial place, and that, for me, is a just cause. Popular Reddit comments. Usuario Anonimo 1. This is one of the most ironic posts I have ever read. You have spent your entire adult life rejecting men based on a single physical trait, height. And now that a man rejects you based on a single physical trait, weight, suddenly it is discrimination and fat phobia. Your hypocrisy is monumental. You have every right to have your preferences, but so does he. You are tasting a spoonful of your own medicine, and it seems you don't like the taste. Response from OP. I keep insisting that it is not the same. My preference for height is a matter of polarity and gender roles. It is almost instinctive. His rejection for weight is based on social prejudices and toxic beauty standards imposed by the media. There is a fundamental difference in the origin of the preference. Besides, I have never humiliated anyone by being so direct. The way he did it is just as condemnable as the reason. Usuario Anonimo 2. Your plan to educate him is incredibly arrogant and condescending. He was honest and direct with you, which, although painful, is much more respectful than giving vague excuses and disappearing. What is it that you admit having done with other men? He didn't ask you to educate him, he communicated his personal preference to you. Now you are trying to shame him so he feels guilty for not being attracted to you. It is manipulative behavior. Response from OP. I'm not trying to shame him, I'm trying to enlighten him. There is a difference. And his honesty was not respectful. It was an act of unnecessary cruelty. He could have simply said, I don't feel the connection, and that's it. The fact that he specified it was because of my physique was a deliberate attack to hurt me, disguised as honesty. Usuario Anonimo 3. Rejecting someone for their weight is discrimination, it is fat phobia. But rejecting someone for their height is what? Height phobia? You have built yourself a hierarchy of acceptable preferences in which yours are at the top and those of others are prejudices. The reality is that we all have a type, and it is not always logical or fair. He has the right not to be attracted to overweight women, in the same way that you have the right not to be attracted to short men. You don't like it, but it is that simple. Response from OP. It is still not the same. Society does not systematically marginalize or ridicule men for being tall or short in the same way it does women for their weight. There is a power imbalance and a social context that makes his preference much more harmful and political than mine. You cannot analyze this in a vacuum. Update 1. Well, I sent him the email. It was a masterpiece of argumentation, if I may say so myself. Balanced, well-documented, passionate, but not aggressive. I was proud of it. I expected, if not an apology, at least a thoughtful response. Instead, what I received was silence. A week passed. Nothing. I forwarded the email with a line that said, just making sure you receive this. I think it is an important conversation. Nothing. The indifference is a form of torture. His silence was a scream that he didn't care, that my pain, my arguments, my attempt to educate him were completely irrelevant to him. Frustration ate away at me. I decided that if he didn't want to listen, he would have to read. I did something that some of you might consider exaggerated, but which for me was an act of poetic justice. I copied parts of my email, the most powerful ones, and posted them as comments on one of his Instagram photos. A photo of him, of course, shirtless, climbing a mountain. I commented, "It's great to see you stay active. I hope you also dedicate time to cultivating inner beauty and challenging social prejudices like fat phobia that do so much damage. Judging women by their weight is not a preference, it is discrimination." And another comment, "A true connection goes beyond the athletic physique." A pity you couldn't see it. It was not an attack, it was a public debate. I exposed it to the light. The reaction was immediate. In less than an hour, he had deleted my comments and blocked me, but not before several people liked my comments and not before he sent me one last private message. It was short and full of a rage that strangely satisfied me. It said, "Congratulations, Laura. You have proven to me that you are not only incompatible with me physically, but also mentally. You are a stalker. Leave me alone." And that's it. Silence again, but this time a silence that I had provoked. Popular Reddit comments on the update. Usuario Anonimo 4. You have gone from being a hypocrite to being a full-blown stalker. Taking your personal drama to his public social networks was an incredibly low and toxic move. You didn't expose it to the light, you exposed yourself as someone unstable and vengeful. His reaction was completely justified. Tay has called you what you are. I hope this serves as a wake-up call for you, although I doubt it. Response from OP, stalker, is a very strong word. I did not threaten him, I simply expressed my opinion in a public forum. He has his photos public. I have my right to freedom of expression. If he doesn't want people to comment on his behavior, he shouldn't behave in such a deplorable way. He created this situation. I only made it visible. Usuario Anonimo 5. Your need to have the last word, to win the argument, has led you to burn the last bridge you had left, that of basic human decency. You have violated his personal space and tried to humiliate him publicly. And yet, you still don't see the irony. You complain that he judged you for your appearance, and you just judged and sentenced him publicly for his character. You are doing exactly what you criticize him for, but at a much more personal and aggressive level. Response from OP. It is not the same. I did not attack him for his appearance, I attacked him for his ideas, for his prejudice. It is a critique of his ideology, not his person. There is a difference. I'm fighting against a concept, fat phobia, and he was simply the representative of that concept. My fight is bigger than him. Usuario Anonimo 6. The rage that strangely satisfied me. This phrase is the most honest and terrifying one you have written. Admit that your goal was not to educate him, but to hurt him. You wanted a reaction, and you got it. You wanted him to stop being indifferent, and you achieved it. Your supposed just cause is nothing more than a cover for your own wounded pride and your need for revenge. Response from OP. Perhaps a small part of me wanted him to feel something. Yes, I wanted him to stop being that impassive robot. I wanted him to understand the pain he caused me. If for that it was necessary to provoke his anger, then so be it. Sometimes you have to shake people so they wake up. Final update. A year has passed. A year of terrible dates, of feeling increasingly invisible in a dating market that seems designed for 22-year-old women with gym bodies. My experience with Marcos has left a scar. Now, on every first date, I'm hypervigilant, analyzing every word of the man in front of me, looking for signs of fat phobia, of superficiality. I have become bitter, distrustful. The other day, karma or the universe or whatever decided to give me one last and cruel slap. I was at a cousin's wedding and there he was, Daniel, the sweet and brilliant guy I rejected years ago for being too short. I hadn't seen him in a long time. He had gained a little weight. He had a bit of a belly, but he also had an aura of confidence and happiness that I had never seen in him. He was there with his wife, a gorgeous woman and, yes, quite a bit taller than him. And they were expecting a baby. She was visibly pregnant. They looked incredibly happy. We talked for a few minutes at the bar. He was polite but distant. He introduced me to his wife, who was charming. They congratulated me on my work and I congratulated them on the baby. It was a normal and civilized conversation between two old acquaintances, but for me it was torture. I saw in him everything I had discarded. I saw a good man who had found happiness with someone who knew how to see beyond a superficial physical trait. I went home early that night and, for the first time, I didn't feel rage towards Marcos. I didn't feel indignation. I only felt a profound tiredness and an immense sadness. I realized that my fight was not against fat phobia, nor against Marcos, nor against beauty standards. My fight was against my own loneliness, against the fear of not being chosen. And my method for fighting had been to build walls, filters, and justifications. Marcos did not discriminate against me. He simply showed me a reflection of my own behavior, and I didn't like what I saw. I still think what he did was wrong, but now I understand that I have been doing the same thing for years and, in the end, the only person I have discriminated against from a happy life has been myself. Popular Reddit comments on the final update. Usuario Anonimo 1. This update is a punch in the gut. Seeing Daniel, the guy you rejected for his height, happy with a woman taller than him, is a karmic lesson of a brutal poetry. It seems that this encounter has finally broken your shell of justifications. The recognition that Marcos simply showed me a reflection of my own behavior is a monumental advance. It is painful, but it is the first real step towards change. Response from OP. It is painful. Yes, it is easier to be angry. Sadness feels heavy. But you're right. Seeing Daniel so happy, so indifferent to something that for me was a decisive factor, made me feel incredibly stupid, as if I had been playing a game with rules that only I followed. Usuario Anonimo 7. The only person I have discriminated against from a happy life has been myself. This is perhaps the wisest and saddest conclusion you could have reached. Your obsession with the flaws of others, the height, prevented you from seeing yours, the superficiality, the hypocrisy, and your indignation with Marcos was a projection of your own dissatisfaction. It is not a happy ending, but it is an honest ending and, from honesty, one can start to build. Response from OP, projection. I guess that is what it was. I hated in him what I didn't want to admit about myself. It is a hard pill to swallow. I don't know what is built from here, but at least I no longer feel the need to send educational emails to anyone. I guess it is a beginning. Usuario Anonimo 8. Thank you for sharing this last update, OP. It requires an immense amount of courage to admit that you have been wrong, especially after having defended your position with such vehemence. Your journey has not been in vain if it has led you to this point of self-awareness. I sincerely wish you find peace and learn to value yourself and others for what is on the inside, not for what a measuring tape marks. Response from OP. Thank you. I don't know if it is courage or simple exhaustion. I no longer have the energy to be angry. I just want a little peace. Thank you all for your honesty. Sometimes, the truth you don't want to hear is the one you need the most.